Hey Slavic Vikings, and welcome to a video where I explain flags and stuff. And to be more exact, I'm gonna talk about the Polish flag, or the Indonesian flag, or many other similar flags that looked almost identically to it. So if you've been on TikTok recently, maybe you've seen these videos.
Why?
I love Poland.
Shut up.
I don't driving by my car, and the road is not so far. Berlin, London, Moscow too. It's my love, I tell you true. When I came to Poland, I saw my car was stolen. It was my favorite truck. I said fucking kurwa mać. Go this way.
Why?
I love Poland.
Shut up.
I don't driving by my car, and the road is not so far. Berlin, London, Moscow too. It's my love, I tell you true. When I came to Poland, I saw my car was stolen. It was my favorite truck. I said fucking kurwa mać. Go this.
And can I just say that I really love this song, and I'm working on a video on the culture of Polish songs, so make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss that. And let's start talking about the Polish flag. So my theory on why these TikToks are specifically about Poland and not, for example, Monaco, is just because Polish is like a meme country already, with all the World War II memes and the Polish cow meme. And also the Polish flag is very simple, and using the iPhone editing tool, you can technically change everything to such a flag. So now I'm gonna talk about the meaning of the colors in the Polish flag. So surprisingly, the Polish flag, or maybe not surprisingly, the Polish flag has been officially the Polish flag only since the 80s, because of communism and stuff, and you know, Poland not existing for like 120 years. And the white color, which is pretty rare in flags, or not pretty rare, but like average rare, the white color represents hope for peace by all the people of Poland, and the red color symbolizes the many struggles for freedom over the centuries, or in other words, the blood spilled in battles. Which, it is amazing if you actually research how many different countries have the exact same meaning of red in their flag, from all different continents and cultures, in Africa, America, everywhere. Because so many different countries fought for their revolution and fought for their freedom, I think it comes to no surprise that they're using red, since, you know, red is a really strong color, which is also the color of blood, which is often used in metaphors in revolutions. Another really fascinating part of flags are that many of them have actual meaning of, for example, ideology. The first thing that might come to mind is the communist flag, or the flags of communist countries. So in the Soviet Union, many countries shared the same style of flag, almost identical, to be honest. And that is the red background with the something in the corner. And interestingly, even though China is not in the Soviet Union, they still have this flag. They implemented it. So in our everyday lives, we generalize a lot, because that is the only way that humans can communicate, is by generalizing. Using flags to represent countries might be the biggest generalizations in the world, which I find very fascinating. Anyway, this was a bit of a shorter video I made. If you enjoyed and want more videos like this, please consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. And as always, Favel, żegnam, and goodbye.